I think that's where the problem is. I didn't know the word perimenopause. I knew menopause, and that happens in your 50s and you get hot. And I thought meditation, practicing, you would even probably go through menopause. Like that was,
yes, we're going to skip it.
We were going to skip it. We're monks. We're going to, like, we're so healthy. We're going to pass it.
Today's episode is really special because we are in Hollywood.
Yes.
It is hard to believe, but perimenopause has come to Hollywood. We knew it was only a matter of time. But before we get into our conversation about perimenopause, I want to talk about what we did last night. We were at the premiere, the world premiere of the Balance docuseries about perimenopause. And I am so happy that I'm joined today by Sadhvi Anubhuti and Sadhvi Siddhali. I got that right. Yay! Okay, I've been practicing forever. But anyway, I cannot wait to have this conversation with you, but I want to welcome you to the Second Opinion.
Thank you so much. It's just such an honor to be here. And for us, it's a full circle moment because you were our very first interview for the docuseries. And now we get to sit here with you and be on your podcast.
We're so honored. Thank you.
So I want you to tell me a little bit about how you decided, let's do a docuseries about perimenopause. What happened?
The whole thing started because we started to go through symptoms that we were not very familiar with. And as monks, we've dedicated our entire life to finding balance, to purifying our bodies, to just having that inner peace and all of these things. And suddenly, we thought we were doing all the right things. And we had achieved a level of peace and calmness and balance, but suddenly Sadhvi Siddhali Shree begins to experience not monk-like symptoms. And she can tell you more about that.
I think you need to call me out on that. Just having anxiety, rage, like lack of confidence, things that I've worked so hard for, and it was just ripped away in 2.5 months of darkness. And so going through all of this, and it was really the not knowing, not even having a word, perimenopause, just that confusion really sparked, one, our own research, and then us also being filmmakers. Then it became like, maybe we should make a docuseries about this, and not even just a documentary, a 4-part docuseries, because we need to investigate all aspects and have this holistic approach. So it really stems from our own suffering and knowing that other women are also silently suffering out there. And with education, that knowledge is power, and it can help reduce that.
Now, I have to tell you that I'm not alone. When I saw that you were Jain monks, first off, I didn't even know women could be monks. I thought that was a male thing. But tell us a little bit about the philosophy of Jain monks. What is the underlying concept about what you do?
So the Jain system's focus is on nonviolence. So that's practicing nonviolence in our thoughts, actions, and speech towards ourselves and others. And so it's an ancient religion in India, but you don't hear too much about it because the monks there do not travel because they practice nonviolence to the extreme. So in India, they don't even get into vehicles. They don't fly in airplanes. And so they walk everywhere. So our teacher, Acharya Shree, is one of the few monks that broke tradition, had that progressive mindset to say that, hey, if you want to spread a positive message, you're going to have to break some rules. And so him coming out here, us meeting and learning from him, that's how we got exposed to the nonviolent teaching. So we hear of Mahatma Gandhi, we hear of Martin Luther King Jr. So Mahatma Gandhi learned from a Jain monk.
But tell me, Anubhuti, how did you come to this? Because the one thing that was surprising to me in the documentary last night, when there's a part where you're talking to your mother about menopause and you're speaking Spanish. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. How do you speak? Explain that connection, because I'm still trying to connect the dots. And you're going to tell me the story of how the two of you got together and what your personal path was to being a Jain monk, because you were a marketing executive, right?
I was in marketing and sales, yes.
And you were an Iraq War veteran, about as far away from nonviolence as a person can be.
practicing in my heart love, but it was difficult out there.
Yeah, well, and marketing is kind of cutthroat too. So, there's that.
Yes, there is.
So what drove you from your previous careers to being Jain monk?
Yeah. So for me, it's part of my story. I was 29 years old. And at 29, I just really began to question this life. Like, why am I here? What's the real purpose of my life? How can I live a life full of meaning and purpose? And I started just to think like, I can't just be making all this money for this big company. I was bringing a lot of money. I was, top salesperson, getting awards and all the things. I looked for a retreat, a spiritual retreat, and it came up in Texas. I used to live in Houston, and the spiritual retreat was in Dallas, and that's where I met Sadhvi, Siddhali, Shree, and my teacher. So I went there for a week, and the teachings of nonviolence, the principles, like everything that I learned that week, it was just so transformative. It was everything that I felt in my heart. And I started to practice the principle of nonviolence, like how can I improve myself by my speech, my thoughts, and my actions? And so just following the teachings really changed my life. And after a whole year of practicing, that's when it clicked to me that, hey, what would be the purest, the most noble thing that I can do with my life? And it was like, I can be a monk. And so that's when I got the idea. I never thought I would ever end up becoming one.
Because you don't know another monk, do you? I mean, before this, it's not like there was
never.
any path.
I was never exposed to it. It was my first time learning about spiritual masters, gurus, spirituality, the Jain system, the nonviolence. It was all new to me, but it was all here in my heart, and it made perfect sense.
And Siddhali, how did you go from the Iraq War to being a Jain monk?
Fortunately, I met my spiritual teacher 4 months before getting deployed. And I thought, finally, I found somebody that can guide me, a mentor that knows, just practices that spirituality, practices, what they share. And it, resonated with me very, very much. And so for me, it was like a lifeline, because when I got deployed, I was just like, oh my goodness, like God, like how can I find my guide, my teacher? And now I'm being ripped away to go to war. And the thing is, I volunteered. I was a medic, so I volunteered for a Kosovo mission because I wanted to help. And as a medic, of course, just helping other people, they turned that volunteer list into you're volunteering for Iraq. And then I was gone for 16 months. And then when I came back home, I was fully gone, partying, PTSD, just not being myself. And going through wars, seeing the violence, experiencing the violence, seeing and experiencing why we're out here, there's so much ego, there's so much corruption, there's like so many things that are happening behind, closed doors while people are suffering, Americans and other people. And so when I went and got deployed, I told myself, I'm there to help humans. And so meeting with Iraqis, helping them, helping America, like our soldiers, it was a lot. It was a lot to take in. And coming back home, going through the PTSD, I turned to my teacher and he shared with me some yogic techniques. And I was able to really get back to myself again and find myself again. And through that, I was like, you know what? That clarity came. Yes, I'm a person that wants to help and to be of service. I want to be a monk that's dedicated to nonviolence.
So you live very peaceful lives. You are vegetarians. You have really sort of rejected all of the things from the outside world that really intrude upon our peace and space. And yet, perimenopause came and reared its ugly head. So, Siddhali, tell me, how did you realize what was going on? And then what did you do about it?
Well, we actually had a really big argument, and it was my fault. I got affected by something. And yes, we're sharing this publicly, but I just got triggered and it wasn't her intention, but I took something and blew it up out of proportion. What am I going through? What's happening to me? I'm not sleeping. I'm anxious. My confidence is gone. Something has disconnected here. And fortunately, she was like, hey, here's this video, shows me something she found on social media. I think this is what you're going through, but more like this,
carefully,
Carefully.
very
Because it's like, you never know.
gently.
It might trigger me and I might explode, which is not my nature, right? But I'm just like, what is going on? But it was because of Anubhuti, who showed me a social media video of Dr. Amen. And he was just saying that that progesterone can drop 10 years before menopause. And that is called perimenopause. And I was like, is that me? And that was our beginning.
So once you had this information and you said, okay, and tell me, how old were you at this point?
I was 38.
Okay. Very important point, because a lot of people don't think that perimenopause has anything to do with you, because you're like, well, that's for old ladies. No, it happens really in your mid to late 30s and sometimes even the 40s. So you're 38 years old. And what was that journey? So you go to see this doctor, and what does this doctor tell you?
So first, I took an online test, and a hormone test. Ordered it online. Again,
What kind of test was it?
It was like a saliva test, just because again, it's like perimenopause. You're low in progesterone, so I'm just thinking like, well, let me see if that's true. What does that mean? And get a test result, and it says you are low in progesterone. So it's like, okay, this is a beginning of something. At least I'm not going crazy. So in my mind, it's like some kind of half diagnosis. And so one of our ashram students happens to have a med spa in New Mexico, and I shared with her, I'm low in progesterone. Have you heard about this? And she's like, oh yeah, like, our nurse practitioner can help you. So come on over. And he eventually prescribed me progesterone.
Okay.
And the first night I took it, I slept like a baby. And I'm like, how do we not know this?
Well, that's the thing about perimenopause. The perimenopause is that time when your hormones are in wild fluctuation. You're having all these symptoms, and it really is a clinical diagnosis. So you had it, but I don't want people to think that you have to go get a blood test or any sort of saliva test to diagnose or treat for your symptoms. So you get the progesterone, you're feeling better, and you're like, oh, I'm back to normal, right?
Kind of. I didn't feel fully like myself. I was able to sleep. But as you saw in the first episode, I made a close student of mine cry. And that's on progesterone. And by doing that, I was like, something needs to change, because
you made somebody cry.
I made somebody cry.
Well, that is hard to believe.
Something is happening. It was like, this is worse than the Iraq War.
See,
that's not me.
This should tell everybody out here that perimenopause makes you not yourself. Yeah. Because I cannot, looking at you now as a peaceful person, I can't imagine that you would make someone cry. But it happens.
It happens. Yeah.
But it happens. Okay. Now, you go back and you're like, okay, progesterone, that's not so great. What happened then?
Really, it's been like a 2.5-year journey to find the sweet spot. So we've been educating ourselves, right? Interviewing, the doctors, and we have this idea. So it's through the journey of meeting all the doctors, including yourself, that it's like, okay, should I add estrogen? Should I add testosterone? Should I do all of these things? And then I go full on in, and it's like, oh, I'm taking too much, and I actually feel worse. And it's like, wait a minute, but I trust the doctors, what they're saying, but why am I feeling completely the opposite? So it actually took me about 2.5 years to finally land on the right amount of each of the progesterone, the estrogen, and now the testosterone.
Your story is not uncommon. Most women sort of have this journey going from, not feeling like yourself to sometimes even being misdiagnosed and treated for something else, or they'll treat you for depression or the mental symptoms you may be having and the mood symptoms without really addressing the root cause. But at some point in this journey, you decided, hey, maybe we can make a documentary about that. Because the thing that really struck me about your documentary is that it wasn't just a bunch of talking heads. There was a personal journey that you made. So when did you get this idea that this was something that was worth sharing with the world?
So we had already had some ideas and thoughts about creating a series before. But when this happened, and when we realized that the education was needed, we were like, okay, yeah, maybe we can do a documentary. We should do a documentary. But the truth is, once we got more into it and we started to do the research and we started to see all the gaps, all the problems, it was like we opened up Pandora's box. And we were like, this is bigger than what we thought it was. And we need to do a series. So it was in that process. Like, it was actually very early on, like during the time that she got tested and I got tested, very quickly, we're like, we're going to film this. And that's where the first episode begins. We go and get tested for our hormones, which I know that you say it's not, the typical.
Yeah.
But we did. And, as we started to go through it, it just felt weird. Like, why are we going to a med spa to get hormones?
Right.
So we're like, that's a red flag. This should be like, accessible anywhere you want and with your medical doctor. So why are we going to a med spa? Why does it feel like, we're doing something illegal? Like, there was that stigma, like, oh, hormones. Like, we started to notice like, oh, so much fear. And this is a controversial thing. And just like the taboo about all the things. So that's when we were like, we decided this has to be a series. So it was very early on that we made that decision.
And some point in this journey, because you started, but then you started to have perimenopausal symptoms.
So it was so interesting because she went to, that same time that she went to go see her results and see the nurse practitioner, I got tested too. We did the saliva test and I hadn't seen my results or anything. And I'm like, I'm going to be fine. Like, my levels are going to be perfect because I didn't think I'm in that zone of perimenopause. And I thought, I'm doing all the right things, so I'm going to be fine. And I go there and I get my results and my estrogen was like completely almost empty. My progesterone was so low and it was alarming because I was feeling very tired and fatigued. Those were my symptoms. I was so tired. I couldn't focus. Everything for me, anything I had to do felt like I had to cross over a mountain. That's how I was feeling at that time. But we also did blood work. And so my blood work was, I was very anemic during that time. But this happened very quickly because the year before I was fine. So I was anemic. I was pre-diabetic, high cholesterol, B12 deficient, vitamin D deficient. Like, I had all of these things that suddenly came up. And then, of course, with my hormone levels being very low. So it was a combination of all these things. And so I was like, oh my goodness, what is happening to me? Like, I felt like I was breaking. My body was breaking and I was losing control of myself, my health and my body. So that's when I started to do my own research. And I started to notice that some of these symptoms were also connected to the low levels of hormones as well. So it's, for me, that was my experience.
Now, you were a little bit less reluctant to go the route and to go to hormone therapy for your treatment. But less reluctant doesn't mean that you were, gung-ho from the very beginning.
Right.
What were the sort of the conditions that said, maybe not on the hormones? What was that?
I didn't have the resistance to hormones. So what I tried was, when I learned I was low progesterone, so I go to Dr. Google, what can you do? What is it connected, right? And it's like, oh, maybe I need to try adrenal drops. Maybe I'm very tired. So I started taking ashwagandha, adrenal drops, and it was when I spoke to the ashram student and she's like, have you heard of hormone therapy? You might need progesterone. I was like, tell me more. So I actually didn't have that resistance. And I don't know if it's because of my, medic background from the military and I'm okay with, like we try to do things naturally, but like if I need to take something, I don't have that resistance, at least not as much as her. I'm ready to try. I'm so desperate. So even if I was against it, you're so desperate that you're willing to try something.
Every year, as New Year's approaches, my family and I have a little ritual. We pick a place where we can step into the new year with intention. Somewhere peaceful, somewhere that lets us close the chapter on the past 12 months and welcome the next with open arms. This year, we chose a quiet lakeside town. We wanted space to gather, cook, laugh, and stay up far too late, talking about the year behind us and the one we hope to build. As we settled into the home we booked on Airbnb, lighting candles, chopping vegetables, and putting on the playlist my kids tease me for, I looked around at the people I love most. There's something grounding about being together in a place that feels warm and lived in, especially as the calendar turns. And I found myself thinking, while we're here making our own New Year's memories, someone else could be enjoying our home and starting their year with a fresh sense of possibility too. Your home doesn't have to sit empty while you're away. It can become a gathering place for another family, a place to cook their first meal of the new year, to share their resolutions, to rest, reset, and step into the next chapter with hope. And the extra income you earn from hosting, it can help support the things you want to bring into your own life in the new year. Another trip, a long-awaited project, or simply a little more breathing room in your budget. Your home can help someone else start their year on a beautiful note and help you reach your own goals too. Your home might be worth more than you think. Find out how much at airbnb.com/host. So hopefully we will leave everyone with the notion that, go to a reputable person and don't try to self-diagnose and treat, because a lot of the things that are out there are, they take your money and they're not effective, and you really have no way of knowing what's actually in the products that you're getting.
I think that's where the problem is. I didn't know the word perimenopause. I knew menopause, and that happens in your 50s and you get hot. And I thought meditation, practicing, you would even probably go through menopause. Like that was,
yes, we're going to skip it.
We were going to skip it. We're monks. We're going to, we're so healthy. We're going to pass it, really clueless about it. And so knowing, what is perimenopause, knowing that it's a hormone decline, and knowing that there's hormone therapy out there, that's why the knowledge and getting it out there is so important, to introduce those ideas and break those ideas. Because if you don't know, you are going to search for, you're going to talk to friends and they're going to say well, I tried this and this and that and this. And if hormone therapy is not in a part of the conversation because friends don't know about it, so you're not going to know about it. And that's one of the reasons why we made this series. It's because not that we're trying to force an idea of everybody needs to take hormones. It's not about that. Right. But when you are educated, you are empowered to make an informed choice. But you can't make the right choice if you don't know. And that's why this series is so important.
So, Anubhuti, tell me, why are you reluctant? Because you don't have just a friend, you have a trusted friend who has gone through this process. Tell me, what is your reluctance?
I avoid medication as much as I can. The fact that we are monks, we have committed to this life of purity, purifying our minds, purifying our bodies, purifying our souls. And that means, putting only the cleanest and most pure things in the body. And so when I heard about hormone therapy, I thought of it as it's a medication. It's like a narcotic, or, something that doesn't go with you and your body. And so I immediately had that resistance and that, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to take it until I understand it fully. And so my journey in the docuseries, it's that exploration. It's asking all the questions that people like me have, people that have fear of putting something in their body that, that might think doesn't go with you or is not natural. So I ask those questions because that's who I am. And even though I'm hearing, when I was seeing her, it's not like, it was all great right away. In fact, I was more afraid of taking it because her journey took 2.5 years to find the right dose. And so I would see her really struggle. It felt like, sometimes she would be like lost, drowning in brain fog, even though she was taking HRT. So it actually scared me more. I'm like, I don't want that if it's going to be like that.
So what were the things, Anubhuti, that you were trying along the way to avoid getting this space where you had to do hormones? What were you trying?
I started to try a naturopathic approach. So I was taking seeds of like flaxseed, is that what you call it? Sunflower seeds and some oils like omega-3s and pairing them with specific timing of my cycle. And I was, just wanted to see if that would work. And I also started to take Vitex, which is an herbal supplement. And those were the things in addition to, like just improving all my habits, drinking enough water, exercising, like activating my brain, because it was a holistic approach. It was not just one thing. We were trying to really do all the things. And so those were the natural things that I started to do. And they didn't take me very far. In fact,
I was going to say, didn't work.
In fact, I had a moment where I had an emotional and mental breakdown because I had so much pressure on me trying to fix my problems and trying to make this work the natural way. And so I tried so hard for a very long time to, show that it's possible to do it the natural way, but it was very challenging mentally and emotionally.
Other thing that I want you to tell me a little about, Siddhali, is that is it not one of the tenets of Jain, being a Jain monk, is about eliminating or alleviating suffering?
Look, so we teach workshops, we live at a retreat, people come to us for guidance, for spiritual guidance. We hear a lot of, painful stories. And, inside it's just like, oh my goodness, like I'm already thinking like, do I need to see a therapist because of the suffering that I'm going through? Like this is violence in my own mind. Not that I was going to take my life, or I didn't get that far, but it was just a very, very dark space. And that's why I was so desperate to figure out through asking questions, how do we come out of this darkness? How do we come out of this suffering? And so I never knew, or I would have never thought if you would have told me like, hey, you're going to make a perimenopause docu-series to help alleviate suffering. And this is an extension of nonviolence. Who knew?
So much of this conversation really needs to be had intergenerationally. Now, Siddhali, I know that you, unfortunately, so your mother passed away when you were 13.
13, yes.
And I understand that my mother died when I was 12. So that was a conversation that we never got to have.
Right.
But if your mother had been alive, do you think you would have had the conversation with your mom?
I will say, I remember when I got my period, she was so excited. I'm embarrassed, but she was excited. Like, so we, started having those conversations. And if she was aware of perimenopause, if she knew what she was going through, I would hope and trust that she would share that with me. I didn't, like my grandma lived with us. My grandma also raised me as my mom worked, but I don't know what the conversations were and how that was passed on.
But I think that with the more, conversations that we have out here in the open space, that more women will get to have these questions answered. And you had the amazing ability to have this conversation with your mother, and we got to see that in the docuseries. So tell us a little bit about the conversation you had with your mom and menopause.
Well, as we started to go through this journey, it was the very first time that we had this conversation. And I asked her, like, why didn't you ever talk to me about menopause and perimenopause? And I don't think she knew anything about perimenopause. And she thought I was kind of far away from experiencing menopause. So she never brought it up until I brought it up to her. And for me, it was very important to help her because she has been suffering for over 20 years. She has a really bad problem with sleeping, insomnia, and I know that this could have been a result of menopause or perimenopause. And so it was important to bring the generational conversation and highlight how our mothers have suffered and how our mothers have been so disadvantaged by the WHI study and the harm that it has caused, and how her experience going to her doctors, OBGYN, primary doctor, neurologist and everybody telling her, no to hormones. You cannot take them. The risks are greater than the benefits, and we're not going to mess with them. And through the work that we are doing and the series, I was just so happy to find help for her. And so now, as a 69-year-old, she's on hormone therapy and her life has changed. She's feeling better. And I hope that this gives the idea to women that they can still help their mothers and that we can still, do something for them.
What was the most surprising thing that you found out about perimenopause and menopausal journeys? Because you interviewed a lot of women.
I think the most surprising thing is the high rate of suicide for women and the mental health that they go through in perimenopause. It's so disturbing that women are feeling like they're so lost, they're so alone, they're so disconnected. And we're talking about violence here. This is self-violence. And in this age range, we hear people commit suicide, but to know that it's actually happening, the highest rate of suicide is in this time frame, is quite disturbing.
What about you?
Yeah, so I have two. And one of them is how little doctors get training on menopause care and treatment. I could not believe it when 100% of all women will go through menopause and doctors get 1 hour, if anything, of medical training in menopause. To me, that's shocking and I couldn't believe it. And also, I would say the long-term effects of menopause. So when we talk about mental health, cognitive decline, bone health, muscle health, gut health, like the whole entire impact, the genitourinary syndrome of menopause, like your mouth. It was very shocking to find out how much menopause affects our entire body, and it's not just reproduction.
I cannot recommend your docu-series enough. And it's not just because I'm in it. It is because there are a lot of voices. And I want people to look at this from the standpoint. And I think you were very even-handed about letting people talk, some of which you may find agreeable, some of which you may not. But at the end of the day, it's up to the individual to decide what it is that they want to do. Now, I know that this documentary is premiering on January 30th. Please tell our audience how they can watch, and because everybody needs to see it.
Balance will be available on Apple TV and Amazon Prime on January 30th, which happens to be Dr. Sharon's birthday. Just lined up perfectly. And if people want to host a Peri party, watch party, they can do that playing the movie, and they can bring their girlfriends or have their husbands join, and we can all get educated in a community way.
Okay. Anubhuti, is there anything you would like to leave us with before we close?
You said it right. It's all about choice. It's all about becoming educated. It's all about empowerment. But, we can not empower women without changing the education. I think the education needs to happen with the medical doctors, the providers. I think that's where it really needs to start. And so my hope is that the series maybe it's not going to answer all the questions, but we're hoping that it will spark the conversation and it will shift the needle for women's health.
Anubhuti and Siddhali, I want to thank you so much for coming here to have this conversation. It was fantastic. And thank you for this documentary, because what it's going to do is that I hope that it raises as many questions as it answers, because women will know that there are different ways to look at it and pick the one that makes sense for you. So thank you both.
Thank you, Dr. Sharon.
As always, I want to leave you with a few clear takeaways, what I call Dr. Sharon's orders. If you live long enough, 100% of women will go through menopause. And while menopause may be inevitable, suffering is not. Number 1, lifestyle matters, but it can only do so much. Biology still drives this transition. Experiencing perimenopause or menopause symptoms is not a personal failure, even for women living disciplined, mindful lives. Take it from the monks. Number 2, Perimenopause begins earlier than you think and affects mental health as much as physical health. Perimenopause may present as anxiety, sleep disruption, depression, irritability, or mood changes. These symptoms are real, common, and too often misdiagnosed or dismissed. And if you are a Black or brown person, symptoms can start earlier, last longer, and be more severe. Number 3, education and validation are powerful coping tools. Women suffer most when they don't know what's happening. Community is important. Find support where you can, from medical professionals, family, and especially friends. Naming perimenopause can reduce suffering, and in some cases, can save lives.